All right, everybody, welcome. This is our live stream between me and Brian at My Tesla Weekend. We're doing this every Wednesday. Today's topic, we're going to address all of the crazy news that's been hitting Tesla. I mean, I do feel like it's been just increasing like crazy. And we're going to talk about each one of them and tear them apart. And that's what we're going to do. Welcome, Brian.
Great topic. Important stuff. Thank you, Herbert. As we know, this is the simulcast we do on Wednesdays between My Tesla Weekend and Brighter with Herbert. And we always get after the hot topics. So this is a good one. I'm excited.
Well, it's a hot topic because it's us unrelenting this entire week, just one news story after another. The biggest one, of course, which is really funny, is, oh my gosh, Brian, did you hear this?
Oh, no.
Tesla's robot attacked an engineer at the Texas factory because of a violent malfunction. And it was leaving trails of blood, forcing workers to hit that emergency shutdown button. And look, they've got a photo of the humanoid robot sitting here. Oh my God, I'm freaking out, Brian. It's a big deal. Everybody's reporting it. It went all over the place. Here's another one. Tesla factory worker attacked by the robot that dug its claws into the back and the arm. This is so gruesome. Such descriptive info. And look at this. I think this came from you or somebody. They typed in the word Tesla robot into the news this today. And look at this. Everybody's reporting it. New York Post, Washington Examiner, Daily. Oh my God. Tesla engineer left with open wound following horrific attack by the robot.
It just keeps getting bigger. The story gets bigger and bigger. So this is an old story. I just love Dr. Know-It-All pointed out that an assault requires intent. The robot has no intent. It's not a humanoid robot. It's a big single arm claw kind of thing. And claws. It has claws. Did you know they're outfitting them with claws? Because that's also not a thing. So this is a good one because it highlights you can trace the biology and evolution of a story like this. It started with, it was either the New York Post or the Daily Mail. Two absolute tabloids. They are sensational garbage. They are what you see at the checkout line. It's ridiculous. On those, they said, well, we need to, the story is years old, at least a year old, and it's from Texas. And it was a simple matter where a person, maybe an employee, maybe a contractor, was in the cage and the machines weren't turned on. That's it. That's the whole story. And they had to press the emergency. That was the button they were supposed to press before it started. Now, I'm sure you read the story. How long was that worker out of commission? Do you recall?
I don't know. But it's
didn't
like
miss
you
a
said.
single day. Did not miss a single day. Did not go to the hospital. That's how horrific the injury was.
Okay. So clearly it was a attack from the news organization.
Yeah.
Not the robot. This was 2021. It was a standard industrial robot. And there's these things where a human is supposed to pick and place an item and put it into a certain place. But they have to do it at the right time because then it becomes dangerous. The human makes a mistake, doesn't press the button just to say that I'm going to enter into the danger zone. And then they got hit. That is part why we need humanoid robots so that you have less of these injuries. It is like, again, somebody was wonderful. They posted up this thing. How many people are killed by robots or hurt by robots? Very few compared to, cars killing humans. But it just is a thing where, the news loves this. It's not just clickbait. They love it. And then they'll but why are you as a news organization willing to let go of your credibility? This was easily refuted. It's a completely bull. And then they exaggerated everything just to get the clicks.
There's your answer. It is that. The New York Post and the Daily Mail do not have a reputation to uphold. If any reputation they have, it is to be sensational. That's what people expect from them, and that's what they enjoy. You remember Weekly World News and National Enquirer? People didn't go there because it was the most trusted brand in your weekly news. It's because they wanted to learn what Bat Boy was up to in his cave.
Yeah, I know, but the problem is this is spreading to just these. I know it started with daily news, but it's now moving on to really credible sources. Okay, so we just had Christmas dinner, and guess what? Everybody asked me as soon as I walked into the door.
Let me guess. I heard your car's recalled. Aren't you worried? What are you going to do? How are you going to deal with it? Oh,
Yes.
millions.
Oh my
Millions
God.
recalled.
This news about, the recall for Tesla's 2 million cars are being recalled because the self-driving system has always been anything but. This went wild. Wide. Everybody was reporting it. We're talking CNN and NBC, and it was on the nightly news. Everybody heard about this. And then this is wonderful. Kathy Kitchler, I know you know her well. She says,
Yeah.
follow the money because people are predictive. Jay Penske owns Penske Media, the owner of Rolling Stone magazine. Jay supports the Penske family business. Guess what Penske Corporation does? They were
Nonsense.
founded.
Nonsense.
That runs automotive. They run automotive dealerships. The dealerships, I think, is Toyota, ICE truck leasing. So clearly, these guys have a vested interest to tear down Tesla as much as they
disagree.
can, and they own.
I disagree. I got to push back on this because this is absolutely malpractice. We're doing what they're doing. Jay Penske does not own any auto companies and never has. We're blaming all the bad actions for all the Baldwin brothers on one Baldwin brother, and that's not fair. They are different people. I went and looked up the Toyota thing. Because, if Jay Penske owns or at least supports a bunch of Toyota dealerships, we'll find it in the coverage. And all I could find was that Toyota made a list of best-selling or of best used cars to purchase. And as a footnote in another article, they said Honda and Toyota already make hybrids. That's the extent of the positive Toyota coverage. So that right there doesn't make any sense. And then you've got and then I just looked up, I searched climate change. Rolling Stone is a big climate change advocacy publication. They they want to support climate initiatives, and that is not something you do when you're in the pocket of big oil. That would run counter to your mission. Penske, as a trucking company, doesn't care what kind of trucks they have. They just need to move goods. So am getting I'm fielding so many of those. And even after I show all the receipts, people still say to me on X, yeah, but I'm just going to believe it anyway. And I said, we've got to be better than the other guys. We've got to stick to the evidence.
Rolling Stone is publishing this, and whether or not there's the follow the money situation. Hey, did you notice that there's now people on X? We can show their comments. Now, this is new beyond just the YouTube comments. So this is Yaniv saying, in Israel, despite this full-scale war happening, guess what the news was all about? The Tesla robots attacking the engineers. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. So in the meantime, everybody's talking about Tesla recall, which, as we all know, was just a simple software update. Happened in my sleep. It's all fixed. Not a recall, just like your Apple does not have recalls when it has software updates. And here's what actually happened and what's happening. Toyota RAV4 has a recall for potential fire related to the battery. Tell me why this is not front page. Why is this not on the news? This recall is real. They actually have to drive those cars back into the dealership. Toyota recalling 1 million U.S. vehicles over sensor that may short circuit, result in airbags not deploying as designed. This is just a few days ago. That's 1 million. Here's another one. Another one talking about Tesla, over 2 million vehicles. This is Reuters saying, Tesla's 2 million vehicles. This is Reuters. Largest recall ever, covering nearly all of its cars, set to recall more than 120,000. And then in addition to the software update for the NHTSA, which by the way was 3 years, and all of what was we need you to do more nags. Tell me any other car that actually has an in-cabin camera. It's crazy.
So that's just unfair. It's just unfair from NHTSA's perspective because they're singling out Tesla to say, drivers are not attentive enough, do something. What about all the cars that aren't monitoring?
Exactly.
Pedestrian deaths are at their highest levels because distracted driving is at all-time highs. And only one company I'm aware of is actively addressing it, unless you also include some of the other ADAS systems that have eye tracking. But those are only on the highway. Not many pedestrians on the highway.
Yeah, in-cabin camera can check for drowsiness and so forth. Anyways, in addition to that, there's another recall. 120,000 vehicles over the risk of cabin doors being unlocked during a crash. Again, over-the-air update. So here's CBS Sunday morning. Tesla recalls more than 120,000 vehicles because doors can unlatch. And this is just unrelenting, Brian. We're talking like 4 days ago and 2 days ago. They're just keep hammering as if they feel like there's blood in the water. Let's keep hammering them. Meet Kevin had this nice roundup saying, okay, none of these recalls landed on the front page of mainstream media. Honda recalling 2.5 million due to fuel pumps. Tesla recalling, or Toyota, 1.12 million due to child safety. RAV4, which we talked about, 1.8 due to fire hazards. GM recalling trucks. Tesla released a software update. It's crazy.
So, do you think that those stories were not in the news or that they just didn't reach the front page?
Very clearly not in the news at all. I mean, you know why? It happens so often and nobody cares.
Then how do we know about it? If it wasn't in the news, how do we know about it? Because it was
So I
in the
didn't know.
news. It was absolutely in the news. It's just that nobody follows those stories because a recall is just a recall. It happens every day. I saw a gentleman saying, notice that right after Tesla's recall, now us here on X, we're seeing recalls from all these other brands that never used to have recalls. And I said, no, those have always been there. It's just that folks like me are now posting them constantly to show you how one-sided it is, how all these things happen all the time, but nobody clicks on it unless it's Tesla. A Toyota recall is not a sexy headline. Nobody clicks on it. Nobody cares. So I don't know. I can't speak to whether or not those made the front page of any particular website, but I assume all those websites go based on hottest stories. And if a story's not hot enough to reach its front page, it doesn't. And there is nothing hot about a Honda recall. It's just normal business.
Normal business. Okay, I'm going to show you another tweet I just found on May Musk. This is May Musk. Awesome. She replied. She got so upset with all this recalls. Look at what she said here. She goes, this is the mother of Elon, says, there must be a reason NHTSA doesn't understand over-the-air updates. Should Alex send them a fax? Because Alex had the long write-up about this. Over-the-air updates that fix many problems while the automakers still have to recall their vehicles to service centers. And then she's called them out, said, as for the media line, they should be named. MarketWatch, CNN, Reuters, AP News, CBS News, NBC News, Wired. Everybody did it. Everybody did it, and they all know. They all know it's a software update. Do you know why I know that they know?
Why?
Because it's in the article, way down at the bottom. Way down at the bottom, and they just decided to go with the big news, in purpose, all that stuff. So Brian,
I will add to that the not only do they know it, but I follow the news every day. I follow all the headlines every day. It's always the top 25 for sure, because I track them. And over the 5 days since that big recall, not one of the headlines mentioned that it wasn't a physical recall. There was no over the air. There was no, and it's already done. That'd be a great headline. Why not run that? Tesla recalls 2 million vehicles and it's already complete while you were sleeping. That's a great headline. But no, it's doom. It's danger. It's the largest in its history. They make it sound like it's the largest in history, the one you showed, but it's the largest in Tesla's history because Tesla is now the largest it has ever been every day.
I mean, so what's sad is, of course, I was there at my Christmas party with my family, extended family, lots of us there, and they're all concerned about the Tesla recall. And then, the thing is, like, when I tell them that everything you read or much over you're reading is all lies, they won't believe me. They can't believe me because it's coming from CBS News, NBC. And so there's this, even when I address it, they still don't buy that I'm actually the one telling the truth, because it's hard to fight this credible source. And that's why I'm asking you is, like, at some point, is that more than just a small pocket of people will realize that these are no longer credible sources? I mean, you and I know that, but...
Yes, but few follow the news as religiously as we do. Most people follow it more like regular religion, where maybe on Sunday a little bit, but not every day. Andrew pointed out that on BBC4, they mentioned there was the recall, but they didn't even mention what it was about, just that there was a recall. And that is not useful information. That sounds more like a homework assignment. So that's very frustrating.
Okay, Brian, you shared this article with me. This is very scary. I'm very, very scared, Brian. Apparently, December 27th, which is this morning, right? This morning, there's an unusual Tesla fire. It required 36,000 gallons of water to put out. Alabama officials, this is what the official said, volunteer firefighters respond to the scene of a burning Tesla that caught on fire Christmas Day. Oh my God, I'm so scared, Brian.
You should be scared because apparently, it doesn't require 36,000 gallons. What it requires is training. And this is a volunteer firefighter brigade. They, I assume, lack the training to understand how to actually effectively put out a variety of fires. There was a fire in Renton, Washington years ago where a jet fuel tanker turned over and caught on fire. The fire department went out and spent hours battling this blaze because they don't have the right tools. And then someone came up with the genius idea, there's an airport right here. Why don't we call them? And they were so excited because they got to fight their first real fire instead of training. They came out, sprayed the foam, and 30 seconds later, the fire's out. It's all about having the right training. And the standard fire department does not know how to put out a jet fuel fire or I guess in this case, a battery fire. The training has reached most fire departments, clearly not all of them.
Okay. So one of the things you've been doing is fantastic. You should follow Brian on his YouTube channel, My Tesla Weekend. He started to track all the headlines. You did this, a month ago, out of the headlines, the top headlines, and you would rank it between if it's a biased or not biased. Can you share with us what we're looking at here?
So this is going back to the 12th is when I launched it officially. I'd been doing dry runs on my end before that. And the idea is I look at the first 25 headlines on Google News, even if they're repeated headlines, and determine positive, negative, neutral to see what the trend is for Tesla's coverage. Is it really as negative as all of us feel like it is? Feelings are less important than metrics. Now, mind you, this is still a pretty subjective kind of chart, but you get the idea. And then each day, there's a secondary topic that I track once a week because most topics do not have enough news to cover to every single day. There's not enough news, and there shouldn't be for Tesla unless, it wouldn't work unless these clowns were out there trying to make sensational garbage. So then I compare it to the other stuff, and I don't know if you've got that one, but you see this trend here. The two red lines, the solid and the dashed, are the Tesla coverage over this time period. And then the other ones represent other companies. And you can see that GM doesn't get great coverage. That low on the 17th was because they had massive layoffs. And that is big news for the papers that generally cover General Motors because a lot of the people reading it are factory employees. But even this week, the news did not improve that much. But you'll see, apart from GM, who spends billions a year on advertising, nobody gets as bad of headlines as Tesla. Even something like SpaceX, which doesn't advertise, has yet to have a day with headlines as bad as Tesla. The same is true of the Boring Company. Their headlines are not as bad, are never as bad as Tesla's best day. And it's because that's what sells.
Okay. So you're saying that it's not that Tesla does not advertise. You think that may be a small part, but not the thing. It's just what sells.
Yeah, because GM gets bad headlines. Ford is the royal blue line. It gets better, gets pretty good coverage, despite not being any materially different than GM, in my opinion. Certainly in terms of advertising, they're not materially different. And then the white line at the top is BYD. Not a lot of negative stories out of.
I love BYD.
So
but this is evaluating all news articles. Clearly, the CNBCs of this world, they are so negative on Tesla because they just love it. They love hitting it.
And they're so big that they rise to the top 25 consistently. And then you get these stories where we were talking about it earlier, the genetic tracking of a story. It starts with one. So Reuters will put out a hit piece, and then 50 other sites say, according to a Reuters report. And all they're doing is repeating the same story. It was like the whole Giga Mexico thing. Reuters was convinced that Mexico City was going to have an auto factory and fly cars out from it, which makes no sense at all. And next thing you know, everybody's reporting it because sources told Reuters. And the story never made sense. And to me, that was a real turning point on my opinion about Reuters, because an editor should have looked at that story and said, I'm going to need way more proof because this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter anymore. They don't care anymore, right? They're not looking
don't
for
care.
truth. You were saying earlier, what makes a story go viral?
What makes it go viral?
Or you had asked earlier, right? What makes a story take off? Yeah.
Right. Because you can do the same story about Honda or Toyota or about Tesla, and if it's a recall, somehow it gets big. And one thing could be, if you look at Tesla, if you look at Elon's companies, how many industries in the Fortune 500 are not being disrupted? If anyone is going to pay for a hit piece, they are you've got unions hate him, oil hates him, legacy auto hates him, labor hates him. Because his companies are disrupting all of that. The only business he doesn't appear to be in is pharmaceutical and so far finance, but that's coming too. So that's coming too.
Yeah.
X will have their financial arm running, I assume, within the next year. They're waiting on some final paperwork and then it takes off. So it's going to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got another bit of news that just came out. I'm scared now, Brian. It says new Tesla cars are falling apart. The company says drivers are to blame. Okay. A Reuters investigation. Oh, wow. This is not just, a few people. They investigated this. Reveals how the automaker denied responsibility for the failure of parts it knew were defective. Rolling Stone magazine. What was really interesting was Tesla responded just a few minutes ago. They said Reuters published an article that leads with a widely misleading headline, riddled with incomplete and demonstrably incorrect information. The reality is Tesla's customers' retention is among the best and highest, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So this
So
is,
yeah.
if you look at, go ahead. You finish that and then
Let me finish this. Yeah, the misleading headline was Tesla blamed drivers for failures of parts it long knew were defective. In reality, buried in the article, Tesla paid for most of the 120,000 vehicle repairs under warranty.
Right. So there's a scene in the movie Fight Club from the 90s where he's explaining how recalls work. Ed Norton's character is explaining that he says, we look at the cost to fix it. We look at the likelihood of failure and what a failure would cost. And if the equation comes out that it's cheaper to just let them fail, we don't do a recall. And it was a very cynical, satirical kind of movie, but that is the reality. They've got to, when it comes to, I looked up when I was selling my Nissan Quest to find out how many recalls were there on it, because I don't recall getting a notification, and that car had all kinds of problems. The transmission never worked right. So I looked it up, and the answer was 0. It had 0 recalls because the problems that they looked at, they determined, it's too expensive, and we'll just fix them as they fail instead. And that is the wrong, but every company does that. If you look at the Reuters article, they say, well, Tesla kept track of all these failures. Yes, that's how repairs work. You keep track of the repairs that you do. If a car comes in with a smash bumper from a deer, they keep track of that as well. It's records retention. What are you talking about? But they make it sound nefarious, and it isn't. They've got to, and then and if parts come in and they're defective, you replace them. That's how it works. The engineering on an item, anyone can build a bridge, but it takes an engineer, a bridge that will stand, but it takes an engineer to build a bridge that will just barely stand. So if you look at old Roman architecture, you'll see some of it was designed with a safety factor of maybe 5. It needs to be 1, anything under 1 and it falls, but it might be 5, it might be 10. These things were built to last millennia, and they have. In engineering, you don't want something designed with a safety factor of 5. You want maybe 1.2, 1.4, so that if there's 20% wrong with it, it still holds up. It is possible that there were defective parts, but an examination by Tesla determined these are not below 1. These are 1.1 instead of 1.2. These are not going to fail. Now that means you and I hit the same really tough pothole. One of us might have a failure and the other might not. That shouldn't surprise you. You've seen people where two people go over the same bump and have different outcomes. The difference is more people will have those failures if the safety factor isn't higher. And if that happens, if you're one of the unlucky, we'll repair it. That's just how all cars work. Oh, you're muted.
That's how it works. It's a good overview. The thing about this Reuters article is that it's not just, misleading information. They deliberately, maliciously, are purposely doing this. I mean, here's the, very easily, this is Tesla responding back, saying that customer photo that you put in there, it's not a failed component. It's a post-crash component that was damaged in the course of reducing the adverse effects of a collision. So this is like a purposely showing a photo that they already knew was the wrong photo, but they wanted to put in there. So it's just, I'm glad that Tesla's, the story here is Tesla in the account and Tesla and X responded. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this idea that Tesla should be doing more PR, responding to more of these, and that these, right now, like when a news article goes out, it goes to wildfire. And all Tesla needed to do was step up and say something complete, here's what the truth is, and then they can't do it anymore. Is there truth to that?
I would like to think that there is, but I'm not necessarily convinced. It will help for sure, but this announcement is not going to get a fraction of the coverage. At the very least, honest publishers will have an opportunity to say, according to Tesla, here's what happened. I think the best approach for PR would be to hire somebody who's really good at it and have them post every day, just post some answers. Here's the most commonly asked questions from yesterday, and there's an archive of them so that when people like me have questions, I can go look at the archives and see if they're there. And if not, I can ask them. And if enough people ask them and Tesla agrees that it's worth dedicating time and resource to, it's there. That would be a way to get one person to do quite a bit of work without having to spend their whole day fielding phone calls and sending out packets and whatnot. So I think that would be a good approach. And it appears that they do have someone somewhere who is on this job. And I think that is a good thing. Do you think it will help?
Yeah, I do think it will help. I was just going to say, though, that, like Tesla's still selling every car it's making. It still is a very strong brand. It's still a very strong, powerful product because it's so good that it's kind of overshadowing all this other issues. Having said that, there's definitely misinformation, disinformation. We need to fight it. That's why I exist. That's why you exist. We're here educating as much as we can. The most recent heat map poll, which was a fairly significant survey, asked the question, is Elon Musk damaging the brand or is he not? And the answer was that it's a wash. People that love Elon has actually grown despite all of his controversial statements on X that has damage. But it's like the number of people who refuse to buy a Tesla because of Elon has fallen. And but they're forgetting that there's also a number of people who want to buy a Tesla because of Elon. So, the question now is, is all these information, I'm telling you, people are hearing it. My family is one example. And yet, guess what happened? I was shocked at the Christmas dinner. Right. My sister says, I'm going to buy a Cybertruck. I'm like, what? So she's a little tiny girl, tiny woman. She's a mother. And she was going to buy the Model Y a long time ago, and then she didn't pull the trigger. It was too expensive at the time, whatever. And then just out of nowhere. And they're a very big BMW, Mercedes, loyal. They're the kind that will fly to Germany, tour to the factory, and get the car shipped over because it's cheaper in terms of taxes and all that. They love Mercedes. And for her to have finally made the decision, anyways, I was shocked. Like, what? Of all the cars, you want a Cybertruck? I was shocked. Anyways, and despite all of this news that keeps coming out. So maybe it's not seeping in, or maybe she's hearing, at least I'm there to provide the other side of the story.
And my cousins are also very interested in the Cybertruck because they have a cabin, and keeping the power on at the cabin is a challenge. It's a part-time job because they're always having to manage the batteries that are out there, and they're just old lead acid batteries. And what they would love to do is drive out on Friday, plug into the house, and let it have its power all weekend, not have to think about it. Because their cabin is only about 60, 70 miles away. So even with terrible range, they would still have, even if they're loaded down, they would still have quite a bit of capacity when they arrive. So this is new markets. These are new people getting into it.
I think if people understand what they're reading on the news, but yet they also know that there's a fervent fan base that's even bigger than what Apple had, it kind of counters anything people say. Because if you have this massive fan base, well, they're not gonna buy Teslas if it has all these recalls, it has all these issues, all these fake news that comes out. They know that, you know what I mean? Deep down, they know these guys were buying it because it is a good car. And then if they've actually been in a Tesla before, they know it's high quality. This is not something that, the other cars are. It's a completely different class of itself. So here's one more false news that came out, or could be false news. I wanted to ask you this, and we're going to do a show on it, you and I, which is this idea of the Model Y, best-selling car in the world, best-selling Tesla in the world, best-selling EV in the world. It's really critical. And so any kind of negative news about it could harm it. And so there was this news just recently that's saying that the Shanghai factory is going to produce a new version of the Model Y, the Juniper, and it's going to come out by mid 2024. Now, in response to those rumors, Tesla came out and they told Tesla China, came out and told reporters, this is false information. Because obviously, if people start believing this is real, they're going to stop buying the Model Y now, and it's going to come as soon as mid-year 2024. I better just hold on. I'll wait for the new version. And so then the sales could fall. This is crazy.
Interestingly, the Bloomberg headline on it this morning was they referred to it not as the Model Y, but as the massively successful Model Y, or something equally glowing, which I thought was pretty out of character for them, but it was great to see. Let's see. The thing with that is it is sensational. I don't think they're trying to harm the company. And we know that when Highland was in the works, when the Model 3 refresh was in the works, that they were quick to say, don't be too hasty with it. Until we see them out road testing, it is very safe to say we are more than 3 to 6 months away, because road testing is a big component. And these cars are, if we've learned anything, difficult to hide, because
What makes you think this wasn't nefarious, that this rumor about the Tesla Model Y, because it's the market leader in China, they want to slow it down. Why wouldn't they spread a rumor like this?
Because I don't think it would be very effective. I think there are better ways to take someone down a peg than that. That's a lot of moving pieces to try and get a pretty distant result.
One thing about Tesla China is that they do respond very quickly to these rumors. They respond like the PR. They respond right away to the news articles. And so what people don't understand, I think, that Tesla China behaves very differently than the Tesla US and others. They actually advertise in China. Like I said, they respond like this. Tesla China talks frequently with reporters. They're doing it. They're doing it kind of their way, but it's working. So as soon as they come out and say, this is false information, shuts it down. And we're on. Now, people will go, well, they've said that many times before. They said that this was false, and then a couple months later, what they were saying was false was actually true. It can happen, but, they, at least they're, as a company, they're protecting themselves, right?
Yes. And I can see why Tesla, I've been saying that the Model Y refresh is not yet due. It's certainly not overdue. The Model 3 was overdue. The S and X refresh were overdue. I think waiting another full year until that comes out is not waiting too long. I can see why they would want to do it sooner. I can see why they wouldn't feel it's necessary just yet. They may want to wait for 48 volt to get all the way through production so they can switch all of it at that time. And then you've got a problem that 3 and Y parts are no longer sufficiently in common for them to get a lot of the benefits they were hoping for. So I'm just not sure what the Model Y refresh will be, but I know you and I will be discussing that at length later today.
Yeah, we're going to do a show on that specifically. So, Brian, let's go through the what happened. Just this week, we had the robot. Tesla's robot seems to be attacking engineers at Tesla factory, leaving trails of blood. We had this massive 2 million car recall. Man, these Teslas are terrible. And then in addition to that, there's a new recall for the door handles as well. And then, there's just these lies all over the place. And then these Tesla fires, 36,000 gallons of water put out. This is all just this week. Do you think any of this works? Which storyline throughout the year do you think was the most impactful for truly changing people's behavior?
So the one that I hear in the wild is fires. They're always catching fire. And when they do catch on fire, it's impossible to put them out. And because of the circles that you and I run in on X, we get to see a lot of very funny things. Like Matthew likes to post pictures of crashed Toyotas and say, "Look at this Tesla that crashed."
Yeah.
Just to draw attention to it. Oh, it's not. Oh, it's a Toyota. Oh, that's weird that it didn't make, the same kind of rounds. But I'd say the biggest story for Tesla would probably be, I don't know, I think still Elon, which is a mixed bag. Like you were saying from that heat map survey, that if you want the biggest story to be Elon and you want it to be negative, it didn't work because he's, even people who dislike him can say, I'm net positive on Elon. And
So yeah, the number one reason why people are not buying an electric vehicle is price. You need to get price parity with the ICE vehicles. And I think the latest data says the average ICE car is at $48,000 and the average EV is at $52,000. Now, this is not Tesla's. This is average.
all.
But so we're getting to price parity already. But the second one is range anxiety. So this is true. I always hear about range anxiety. That story is still pervasive. And now the only thing about that one is that we are hearing partnerships left, right, and center. Not only did, it made headline news when Ford partnered with Tesla for the superchargers, GM and every company basically fell in the last 6 months. But in September, Hilton partnered with Tesla to put superchargers in their hotels, 2,000 hotels. And then just a couple of weeks ago, Best Western announced that they're partnering with Tesla for maybe not superchargers. They're the wall chargers are there.
Destination.
And so, I know that range anxiety is the number 2, so we need to solve this, but I feel like it's going to solve itself. And in the next 2024, there's going to be a tremendous amount of partnerships being announced. And as you hear these partnerships, less and less people are going to be concerned that there may not be a charger where they're going and there may not be enough out there. I think it's being resolved, but again, I'm in a bubble, so I don't know. What do you think?
So
you're in the same bubble as me, so what do you know?
I am. The people I see who have range anxiety are people who have never driven an EV or have only driven an EV that wasn't a Tesla. If I didn't have a Tesla, I would have range anxiety.
Agreed.
I had to do a pretty long drive last night, kind of late, and not once was I concerned, where am I going to find juice? As long as I've got my destination set, it will tell me if and when and where to get what I need to get where I'm going. So it is a unique concern for anyone who's not buying a Tesla. And it's only going to get better because starting next year, starting in a matter of months, some vehicles will have access to the Tesla Supercharger network. And within a couple years, just about everyone will. And that's going to be better because Tesla Superchargers
For everybody. Yeah.
uniquely
And that's the
work.
thing, right? If range anxiety is solved for every car, then range anxiety becomes a thing of the past. People will buy electric vehicles. But yeah, so it's price and range anxiety are still number 1 and 2. So I'm not so sure that you said that, Tesla catches on fire. I don't know if that changes people's behavior. I just don't think so.
I hope not, because car fires are a thing that happens, and I've never once let it be a consideration in what I purchased. I'm sure there is a brand that is, 10 or 20 or 30% more likely to suffer a particular type of failure, but I have never, that's not been my decision process. It's never
Do you
been a
think that
factor.
any of these stories that we just covered just this week and all the negative hits on Tesla, do you think they impact Tesla investors? I mean, one of the things is CNBC, they constantly talking about Tesla being a bad investment. They're out there. They're small. They're not as big as they used to be, these TV channels. But, do you think that
They
as an
do still
investor?
have an impact.
Yeah.
I don't. So to me, the daily news affects the daily price, but it doesn't affect the long-term price. The highs that we saw after the Hertz announcement, that was a lot of people getting into a company. They'd seen big gains over the last year. They wanted the hype. They bought the hype, and what they got was hype. I didn't think those valuations were necessarily reasonable at the time. And, you can't go up 10x a year when the company is not growing 10x a year. But you can still have growth. At the end of the day, the fundamentals are all that's going to matter, and nothing the news is doing is impacting that. When a company is still very small, negative news and short sellers can depress the value of the stock to such a point that you're in buyout danger, or that you are no longer considered creditworthy, or you'll get higher interest rates. And in the case of Tesla, they had convertible bonds for some of their debts. They had raised money, and the deal was you can either get paid back in shares, this many shares, or if you don't accept it, if that date comes, we have to give you back cash. And that was a looming concern in 2019, as there was long-term convertible debts coming due. And if the share price wasn't high enough, Tesla would have to pull real cash out of their pocket. And they didn't have that kind of cash. They would have needed to refinance the debt. And fortunately, the stock price took off, and those investors were very, very happy with their decision to take the stock instead of the cash.
So I got another angle to talk to you about.
Okay.
This might actually be good news for Tesla. So they're talking about the Tesla bot, buddy. They're talking about the Tesla bot. And look, this Tesla bot has intent. It's smart enough to do violent actions. And it can actually do things because it can attack an engineer. So do you know what I mean? Like, yes, it's a negative, but it's telling everybody that Tesla has a robot. And here's the photo.
It's
And you're
very
smiling,
silly.
Elon.
The only
So
thing
maybe-
funnier than that is putting Daily Mail and Science in the banner, because those two things don't go together.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
don't
Anyways,
have that.
I think the reason they did this, of course, is they go, okay, what are the hottest things right now? Tesla. And by the way, Tesla just dropped their Tesla bot. There's a lot of interest in that. Let's do a story where the bot is come to life and attacks. Now, it's dangerous because it can be a slippery slope, right? Because if the public sentiment about bots, they turn against bots because they think that it's dangerous. It's not going to work, but it could. That's the angle. But other than that, this is good news. They're educating folks that Tesla has a robot.
The good news that I've seen over the past week or so is a lot of positivity about the Cybertruck, not a lot of negative headlines because they're harder to write. The bot has been getting good reviews, not reviews because it's not a product that's for sale, but good coverage, favorable coverage, both in terms of its utility and in terms of its investment, its return on investment potential. And the other one was, maybe those were just the ones. And Anthony points out, they said robot, not Optimus. And if you read the story, the accident happened in 2021.
Yeah,
So
it's
it
2021.
was, yeah. And if it bleeds, it leads. And he bled. But he did not miss any work. He was not hospitalized. It is not clear if it was even an employee or if it was a contractor. And it is clear from posts we've read from Dr. Scott Walter that safety protocols were not followed. That's what happens. You need to follow the safety protocols, and that engineer failed on that front.
And then the other thing I was going to say is just similar in that vein. Tesla is made a big deal. If they were just a tiny company, wasn't making any change, wasn't going to be important in the future, they'd ignore them. right now, right, you have to attack Tesla because they are the leader. They are going to take over the world. Do you think that with Elon buying X, and X being a media company, and now that all these journalists and all these newspapers, they're realizing that they're in trouble, maybe they're not in trouble. What do you think? Is there some of that? That because if Elon did not buy X or Twitter, would there be less of these malicious articles?
Boy, I just don't think so. I think they're already at maximum FUD. I don't think they could get any worse. And they are in trouble because their model relies on advertising. It used to be that newspapers got the majority of their advertising from the classifieds. As soon as the internet got any good at all, the classifieds dried up and the papers started really, really struggling. And then when they went online themselves, they found, these ads don't pay very well. People are very good at visually, mentally skipping them in ways that in the newspaper, a newspaper ad was more effective based on how many viewers it had. So it made it a little, it's made their jobs incredibly difficult, and it's why they're so aggressively chasing the clicks, is my take.
Yeah. No, I mean, like you said, it was maximum. It was already happening before. It's going to continue to happen. And again, good news is, but bad news is good news. Just as long as they're talking about Tesla, we're in the headlines.
I will point out a lot of people who fled from X, I'm not going to use this platform anymore, have returned because it's where the eyeballs are. It's very, very difficult to unseat an incumbent platform. And that's what Meta has discovered with Threads. It's not working. And the same was true with the advertisers. Many left and then returned.
That's the thing, right? When an article like this is written by Daily Mail, robot attacks an engineer at tech companies, it typically the breaking news happens in X. Now X has community notes. So people are able to then quickly tag that and saying this was false, this was 2021, this was not a humanoid bot. They can quickly just give you articles and, shut this down quickly. So it's starting to happen that when these articles are printed, at least on X, then the question is, does the mainstream media take that and spread it around? Of course, they're not. And then are they still important? Is mainstream media still important? Do they still have an impact more than, X is still relatively small.
So the value of all those legacy companies is they are the ones doing the original reporting. I've seen people say, well, just get rid of all of those and let us do it. Right, but we're not doing the original reporting very often, with the exception of like Joe Tegmeyer and me when I go out to actual locations. Kyle from Out of Spec does a lot of original, but most of what most of us do is following the headlines and trying to find what's real and what's not. And without that, what would we be able to report on? Just press releases, I think? Yeah. Tough to say.
And then I think on the other side, right, I think we understand that mainstream media is still very important, but they're becoming less so. And what's now important now is social media. And just like when the Cybertruck came out, we reported on that the 5 YouTube, the YouTube creators who are just the most popular, they generate 30 million views of incredibly positive coverage of Tesla and the Cybertruck. Joe Rogan spoke at length about how great Tesla is, and his viewership is massive. And not only that, but they are personalities that have credibility. And so this, this kind of dwarfs all of this that's happening. I mean, really, at the end of the day, this stuff is annoying.
And that 30 million figure was a week ago. Since then, I know CarWow has put out more videos. I know Jason Camise has put out more videos. And because they're seeing how successful this is, how much thirst there is for this topic. So they've basically gone to the cutting room floor and said, what do we got left? Let's run it. And Sandy Monroe from Monroe and Associates has interviewed Jason. Matt Farah has interviewed Jason. And it's certainly north of 60 million. And you can argue, well, yes, but this person isn't credible or this person isn't. But within their communities, within their fandom, they are absolutely credible. Not everyone likes Joe Rogan, but you know who does? His listeners, his viewers. Yeah.
So let me ask you this question then, Brian. All right. I mean, if negative articles, negative headlines about Tesla gets the views, Why didn't these social media people do a negative hit and get even more than 30 million, you know?
On Cybertruck, if it's for Cybertruck, the answer is because they tried and they didn't get the views because they lacked credibility. You can say it's going to be a pedestrian killer all you want, but until there's any tests or any real world experience from which to base your claim, it's not going to take off in the same way. And these cars will be tested, and when it comes out, that's going to be what we'll find out. But until then, what else? What other negative things can you say? There are people who are saying it's not green enough. We should have small cars. Yeah, but we need to meet the buyers where they are. And somebody looking for a Cybertruck is probably the person who would have bought an SUV or a truck. They're not the person who was looking at a compact car. A Civic, no one says, I'm going to get either a Civic or a giant truck. They're too different.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for putting this together. I want to show folks who hadn't seen this yet. Brian tracks the media headlines, the top 25 every day. This is from December 12th to December 24th. And he's taking a look at Tesla, which is the red here. You can see that it's a negative, always negative 100, negative 50 in terms of the bias indicator. And from December 12th, it's risen a little bit, but it's always negative. Every other car company is up here, or even Boring, even SpaceX. So it may not just be because of Elon. And then the one that's worse is GM. But that's probably just in this particular moment when they had their layoffs, that there was massive negativity hit them on that. What's lithium? Why would you follow lithium?
It's just a topic. It is a battery topic. Lithium is a very general term that should encompass many, many things because it's just an element. It's a medication. It's a lot of things. But overwhelmingly, it's batteries. And the negativity we saw this week was all about the potential for fires. And then there was a few stories saying, oh, but this battery breakthrough or that battery factory is being built. Oh, but also your electronics are going to catch fire at Christmas time. Here's what to do. And it's...
Okay. So this is great that you did this because it's basically proof that Tesla does get negative bias. We already knew that, but it's just nice to quantify this. And then you compared it to other companies and they are not getting the same negative bias that Tesla has. And what's interesting is both SpaceX and Neuralink and BYD, Boring Company, they're all doing just fine. They're not being hit hard. Guess they don't get the headlines. So that's interesting.
My takeaway on SpaceX was space viewers, space readers, space consumer news consumers are more analytical and less prone to influence by nonsense. So if you want to appeal to them, you hit them with facts, not with sensational nonsense. The people looking to the stars are aspirational folks with big dreams. They're not here for the rage. But even Boring Company is not, the most exciting kind of product, but it still has a net positive. And yeah, while I do track these every day, I only publish them publicly once a week-ish. And they do all right when they're published. And if I were to publish all of them, it'd be kind of information overload. But they are available on Patreon and X for subscribers and YouTube for channel members if people want to see the rest.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you and I are doing YouTube videos. We're countering this information out there. But do you think that only people watch this channel are the people who are already Tesla, investors, Tesla fans? How do we spread the word beyond our base so that it's like mainstream media seems to obviously, broad base? How do we get there?
Well, it would cost a bit of money, but I suggest face tattoos. I don't know. I don't know how we get our message outside of this except by educating our viewers so that when someone says, boy, did you hear that this is a true story. They did use 36,000 gallons to put out that fire. Our viewers would be able to say, yeah, but that was a volunteer firefighter, brigade. They're not trained. They don't know what they're doing. And as my reaction, no one has approached me saying, oh, the recall. But if they had, I was going to say, meh, it's just not a thing. It's already done. It's already done. and just kind of be
When
dismissive
do you think
because
for the recall word though, isn't it NHTSA that needs to change that? Because if NHTSA doesn't
Yes.
say recall, they say updates, then the news articles can't say recall.
right. And the news articles will argue, and maybe rightly, that if they use a word other than recall, they're not being true to the source material, which is the NHTSA press release. NHTSA calls it a recall. They need to revise and revisit that because that is overdue for an update.
Yeah.
Laws
And that seems like just
famously
more
trail reality.
Yeah, it just seems more like organizational, just being slow to the move.
And worth mentioning, the 2 million cars recalled were not recalled because the product was faulty, but because the drivers were. All the car does is nag you more. And last night I took it out to determine how much, and the answer is twice a minute. Twice a minute. That's extreme.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially when it wasn't actually causing any accidents, like significant increase per se. It was just more of a not data driven reaction.
The accidents we've seen from the different lawsuits were all ones that took place before eyeball tracking. And I'd say the car is very good at eyeball tracking. It knows where your eyes are. It got mad at me because I was looking too much in the mirror during a merge. And it was like, you still need to look forward, buddy. It's like, all right. I mean, I am paying attention. I thought I was, but okay.
Wow. That I guess in a way that shows you that it's pretty incredible what Tesla's able to track, how closely they know what you're doing. So this will all work out in the end. So great show. Thank you so much, Brian. You came with a bunch of information here. I hope you guys thought that this was full of data, not just a discussion. Yeah, we're going to keep addressing these negative biases, but at the end of the day, more news about Tesla is probably good news. So we'll see if that's true or not. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Herbert.
Bye-bye.